All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Relief Podcast. Today, our guest, Daryl Wazynski. He founded 1-800 Breakup. He has over 19 years' experience, based out of Michigan, works nationally, and has a lot to say about real estate, his experience, and the the kind of, I guess, leadership it takes to build a movement centering about people's pain. So, Daryl, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Demetri. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, we only connected just a couple days ago because I was curious about you moving brokerages, and then my curiosity unearthed a few more questions, and I got to learn about how you really stand out from the crowd. Tell us more about what attracted you to real estate and specifically to the type of niche that you serve.
Well, my history is I grew up in Detroit in the rough areas, and then I went to the military. I was in the military, and then in the military, I came out of the military, and then I went to school for business, and after that, I worked for corporate, teaching finance and insurance and sales skills to dealerships. I taught dealerships how to make revenue and money. Um, I did that for the betterment of 10 years or so, and then in '08 I decided to get into real estate. In '08 I got into real estate during the housing crash. What an idiot everybody thought I was. Like, why are you getting into real estate? First year in real estate, '08, I sold around 75 homes. The broker was like, "Who is this guy? How is this possible?" Back then, it was a ton of short sales. That's all it was. Short sales, buying bales, whatever you want to call it. That's what it was. Um, I did. I worked for my first brokerage for about 2 years. Um, that ended abruptly. Not in no control of my own. Went to another brokerage, joined a team, was there for 2 years, was a buyer's agent. Was more focused on listings. Team leader didn't allow that. Ended up leaving. I went independent for a little while, about 6 months. Then left there. Went to work for an agent who's a huge coach now in the industry. Worked with him for 2 years. Left there. I really wanted to start a team, but he had a team, so it was kind of hard to finagle a team inside of a team. He's now one of the top coaches in the industry, and he still has a team. Went independent again. Joined one of the top cloud-based brokerages. Had the number two team there. Left there. Way expensive. Just more problems than what it was worth. Then went back independent, and then ended up at the brokerage I'm at. So that's kind of like the history. I've been at 3 or 4 brokerages in 19 years. In 19 years, collectively between myself and my team, we sold about 9,000 homes. Um, Over that time, I became focused on building additional revenue streams. Where are we going to get deals from? What generates business, right? Besides just cold calling, FISBOs, expired, things of that nature, what could we do to generate additional business? So that's where the whole premise came for 1-800 Breakup. It all started with divorcerealestate.com. I purchased that name and purchased the phone numbers. Took me a long time to figure out what to do with it, how to do it, how the process looked like. Clearly, I failed at it tons of times, and who knows if I even got it right this time. so that's how 1-800 Breakup came to be. Is that I wanted to generate leads for myself, and then ultimately it became that we were going to allow this to be on a national level. So that's kind of like the progression over 19 years. Divorce, real estate, 1-800 Breakup started about 10 years ago.
I mean, that's amazing. You know, because right now if someone were to even want to buy a 1-800 number, most of the names are taken. So
Right,
you have to have some really wild vision to see what a need for them to serve a marketplace and be a one-stop place if you need it in these circumstances.
correct. Yeah. He, and the funny part is when I was trying to find the phone number, I didn't have a clear vision. I remember I got into an argument with toll-free people, and there's so many of them because so many people different own different numbers. And I remember getting into an argument with this guy, and I was like, man, this guy's an asshole. I remember saying that to myself. And I was sitting in my office like this, and on one of my other screens was a Facebook page. And I remember somebody I knew was breaking up. And I just picked up my phone and called 1-800 Breakup. I said, like, if you'd like to buy this number, call this number. And the rest is kind of history, but not that history because we're in a alpha beta development stage, still testing things before we go completely nationwide, and we're getting there. So people will be hearing about this in the next 6 months to a year. This will be nationwide.
I mean, look, just the last few years, right? Whatever the world has gone through has upset a lot of stability. You got
Correct.
a lot of people don't have the same type of traditional jobs or job security that they did, in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s. So, but they have a 30-year loan with 25 years left. And whether it's a low rate or a medium rate or a high rate, it's so much money per month. And,
Right.
and then, somebody's in a marriage or a relationship that's it's fizzling out. They may own a property together.
Mm-hmm.
There's some complications there. Talk about how you meet people where they are. If emotions are heated, if things are, people aren't on speaking terms, or you have to maybe deal with attorneys to facilitate movement, and how you're patient throughout that process of serving your client.
So typically, our company is not a company that is invoked after the divorce is filed. We're typically the research phase when the consumer is thinking about breaking up or getting a divorce. They have assets they need to dissolve. They're unsure of like what that looks like. There's no roadmap necessarily for a breakup or divorce, and a lot of it is emotionally charged, emotionally driven, and at the same time self-destructive for most parties involved in a breakup or divorce. Because when things were good, the roadmap was clear. When you're getting a breakup or divorce, your emotions run rampant. Sometimes it's a financial stress. There's so many variables that are involved in a breakup or a divorce that emotions start to take over. So, 1-800 Breakup and DivorceRealEstate.com and Cooperative Divorces and New Beginnings are primarily focused on the idea of a roadmap for the consumer that's free of charge. So if they're getting into researching it, like how much is their home worth, what does the laws look like, what is case precedence, things of that nature. Like what does this look like if I break up or get a divorce? A lot of people get scared and will just stay in a marriage or in a relationship because they're too scared of what the outcome is going to be, and then ultimately it gets worse and worse and worse. Uh, so our company we don't hire, we refer out to real estate agents, attorneys, and the therapists, some of the best in the industry. This way they can provide a clear roadmap. And they can depend on 1-800 breakup and divorce real estate to have their back. Now, it doesn't cost the consumer anything to work with our company. We, the professionals, pay us a referral fee, and we collect from the attorneys, the real estate agents, and the therapists. So we put all the agents through. If they're a real estate agent, we put them through a process of like what this looks like, what the best roadmap is, how to do it legally, and how to help the consumer go through the process. So when they go through it, they can start a road to new beginnings and start a new life. They have good credit. They can buy a new home. So there's always those conundrums, right? How do you deal with two consumers, right? Because somebody's scorned you, somebody's angry. Sometimes it's just easy peasy. How do you deal with them? And that can be, at the end of the day, it's sad to say, some it's either one or the other. It's not. It's really not. It's really cut and dry. Either it's about the money or it's about screwing over the other person. That's typically how a breakup works. And if you can help the client understand that this is going to play out the same way, it doesn't matter if it's client A, client B, client C, client D, that at the end of the day, all they're going to do is burn up their credit and lose money, or do they want to have good credit and money so they can start a new life? Now, the attorneys, they're kind of weird in this situation. One, attorneys don't really like real estate agents. They just don't. They don't care. Attorneys went to school, put in all that time to pass the bar. Here comes a real estate agent that went to school for 40 hours, 90 hours, whatever it may be. And attorneys, they make their money based on clients' emotions, right? If so, nobody wanted to sue or nobody wanted to get divorced, attorneys wouldn't have a job. So attorneys love it when clients are fighting over nonsense, right? Because case law is still case law and it's still going to play out the same way. They'll tell the consumer whatever they want to hear so they can get more hours at $350, $400 an hour. And I just had this conversation with a good friend of mine yesterday who's getting divorced. And at the end of the day, I said, cooler heads will prevail. You're going to go through a roller coaster ride. But our conversations with attorneys, at the end of the day, if we teach the real estate agents the right way to do everything, leave their own opinions out of it, dot their I's, cross their T's, make sure their contracts are correct, communicate with the attorneys, be transparent, there's a lot of money to be made in this industry. The more money is made on the backside of the divorce, because this too shall pass. The divorce and breakup shall pass. The new beginnings will start. Right? What does that look like for them? Do they need a financial advisor? Do they need credit repair? What does this look like for them to start a new life? Doesn't matter if it's in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or one day after the divorce. You want to be able to help them start their new beginnings. Because before, they were probably dependent on their spouse in some fashion. Now they're solo. Now they're going to need your help. So that's kind of like how we work. We try to work with the attorneys, right? Because we don't want to go and trash the attorney and talk trash about them. Because we want the attorney to get this through the court case, through the court system as fast as possible. At the end of the day, if we can set the expectation for the consumer how this is going to play out, hopefully the consumer maintains their credit, maintains their job, understands that the home either is going to be paid off by the other person or bought out or sold. And so that's the purpose of the company is to provide a roadmap for your asset development attorneys and therapy. Everybody needs a therapist afterwards, right? How are we going to work through this? And then aftercare, like moving, credit repair, everything that you could possibly need in life that you had no clue on how to do before this breakup or this divorce, if that makes sense.
It does because I think a lot of people in the real estate business are transaction focused, where
Mm-hmm.
they're relationship focused, and you want to serve the people beyond just one transaction, knowing that once they, you know, settle into a new life and a new tomorrow, they're going to be a customer again,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're going to want to buy a home, maybe move somewhere, and somebody in your network can help them. Um, what I wanted to follow with is, how do you maintain strong standards among your affiliate network? Because it's just like a chain. It's only as strong as the links that bind it.
So before the process even starts, um, a lot of lead generation companies will give the leads to a bunch of agents because they believe that if they give the leads to like 5 agents, somebody will end up closing it. That's typically how lead systems work. Um, the TCPA and the Federal Trade Commission and the FCC and the CFPB and all of them are constantly making rules, right? So as we went into this process to figure out how do we stay compliant, how does this work, we focused on the idea that instead of shotgunning the consumer's information to to 3 to 5 people, we would have the consumer interview multiple real estate agents over video like this. We would have them interview multiple lawyers, right? Maybe we'd have them interview multiple therapists, and the consumer would pick who they thought was best for them. Now, understanding that we're only forward facing one side of the transaction, right? One side of the spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, we're only one side. So there's still another side, and we don't know them. They're probably not accustomed to, like, they don't know this is going on, and maybe in the beginning, again, we get to the clients in the research stage. So once the process starts, the consumer picks the agent they want to work with. They pick the lawyer they want to work with, and they pick the therapist. At the end of the day, we're huge in the systems and processes, so we're going to make sure that the consumer is getting followed up with. 1-800-BREAKUP is the expert in the industry. That's our motto, right? A road to new beginnings. We follow up with the consumer through artificial intelligence and technology. Are you happy with who you picked, right? Did you sign a contract with this agent? Are you concerned about this agent? So we stay in touch with them throughout the process, right? So they're customers for life, right? In the beginning, before they even sign anything, in the middle, and at the end. We want to make sure that the consumer is getting the best experience possible so they don't get screwed and they can focus on what's most important throughout the process instead of worrying about the minimal details, right? And that's not to say that one side's not going to say something bad about the clients, or sorry, about the agents or the attorneys or the therapist, right? There's always somebody who's going to have a negative effect. And that's the downside to our industry, is that our Google reviews are probably going to be 50-50 bad and 50-50 good. But at the end of the day, we want to be that voice when somebody uses our company. They get a good agent who's got training for divorces. I don't care what certificate they've gotten in the past. They're going through our training. And we want to make sure that their attorney did what he said he was going to do, and he just didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. And that they got therapy. And that if they know somebody else that's going through like this, that they refer them to our company. And no cost to them, it's free of charge. So that is the purpose of what the process looks like for the consumer.
Wow. So it's basically not just full circle, but full cycle.
Yeah. And just like in real estate, there's that saying that when one home sells in the neighborhood, 2 or 3 more sells. Typically, people run into. Yeah, that typically is the saying when a home sells. But the funny part is the data shows that when somebody gets divorced, usually 2 or 3 circles in, connected to that person, other people are thinking about getting divorced, and they won't get the courage up to take the step to somebody they know does it. And then typically within 1 year to 3 years, somebody in that circle gets a divorce again. Somebody else in that circle gets the courage to get a divorce.
Yeah, it happened to me. So yeah, the same thing with a friend, and some people think it's contagious, and then other people see somebody who looks happy and says, "Wait, I could be happy too," if 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 the relationship is beyond repair. Um, there can be a happy tomorrow, and sometimes it comes at a heavy cost. But as one of my friends from college said, divorce is expensive because it's worth it.
Yeah, and sometimes people have this attitude that it's better to keep them, but
Oh, cheaper to keep her? Well,
yeah, that like that model or anybody cheaper to, or somebody doesn't know like who they would
yeah,
date that they're so accustomed that they don't want to do this.
yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, what the data shows is that everything comes to a head, and people will watch other people. It's just like if you ask questions in a room, like everybody will keep their hands down, and one person will finally raise their hand, and after the one person raises their hand, everybody will have a question afterwards. Same concept.
Oh, that is safe. Like
Yeah,
okay, just like taking that leap, just like leaving your comfort zone, right? Just
yeah,
like people making sales calls. We touched about it. You said that most people in this business don't even want to pick up the phone anymore.
right. Yeah, most people like they would just like it handed to them, right, in real estate. But we're problem solvers, so there's really nothing. There's no difference between divorce real estate and being a regular real estate agent. A regular real estate agent helps a consumer when they've outgrown their home, they've downsized, somebody's died. You're a problem solver. When real estate agents start to understand that they're problem solvers, that's when they win. Divorce real estate just has the education, the experience to handle these situations with expertise, truth, and calmness when the consumer is a wreck. So we can accomplish their goals so they can work with us in the future and buy a home and start their new life over.
Well, you are the professional that brings other professionals to like otherwise just a gruesome scene, and knowing that it's kind of like a natural order of life, knowing that at least 50% of marriages in America end up in divorce, and then an even higher percentage of second and third marriages end up in divorce. If
Yeah, well, some data behind that is 80% of women file for divorce. Data shows that the women knew 2 years before that they were going to get divorced. 95% of people who get divorced go on a last ditch vacation to try to make things work. That vacation is a total disaster. After that is like when everybody's like, we're going to get divorced. Um, 70 to 75% of the time, the relationship was doomed from the start. Um, the people who was getting married, one person in the relationship, wasn't really all in and just thought it would be okay and they would change, that things would change and get better. We call that non-negotiables. People not communicating their non-negotiables, but people still get married, and then further complicate the issue by having kids, buying homes, buying assets, um, and the other problem that we see is that the world that we live in today, so many people are just willing to throw anything away that they don't want to put any work into a relationship. And a relationship is no different than having a business, a career, or something of that nature. Where you're constantly working on your body, your health. It's easier just for me. Like I got to get up at 4 in the morning to go to the gym. It's easier for me to say sleep and say I don't want to do this, right? but I know I got to do it. Just like in a relationship, having those conversations about your non-negotiables, having the conversations and dealing with the hard facts instead of dragging things out. Sometimes the relationship should end, but that's like for the therapist side. Some people come to our company, will go to therapy, and they won't get divorced. And good for them. Or great. We really don't want to see families broken up, but that happens in that, and it's all about experience. And for example, we take the paycheck out of it. We lawyers are collecting a paycheck no matter what. Therapists are collecting a paycheck. If the real estate agent could step in and say, "Hey, you should do X, Y, and Z first," and if that solves their marriage or it fixes their marriage, and they didn't lose everything and destroy their credit, guess what? That agent is a friend for life. They're going to get referrals.
I mean, you're stepping up, and it reminds me of what I do in my business. I look at it like if I was able to help somebody and they didn't have to sell me the house or they didn't have to lose it to foreclosure, then I did something, whether there's any money in it at all. Um, and I think that's a wonderful lesson for a lot of people is that you just maintain that spirit of service, knowing that it's a numbers game, literally, and that if you have enough conversations or your team does, that eventually you'll be helping a lot of people move on from like you said, situations that ideally should have ended, but sometimes we hold on out of stubbornness, out of ego, out of wanting to keep the dream alive or maintain appearances. And when it's time to move on, you need somebody who's not completely opportunistic, um,
Mm-hmm.
an advocate, um, so that you can get market value. Because I know from my own experience when getting divorced, I had a wife who took a property and we didn't really talk much afterwards. But I said, you sold it for half of what it could have been sold for, and she's like, I know. So I mean, like if you were able to talk to, like it called your service back then. I don't know if you were around in 2014, but uh, that's when my divorce happened. Um, you know, people are opportunistic in knowing that some people only have like a property to sell once, like an investment,
Mm-hmm.
secondary property, that they might have owned to develop in the future or have some future investment. But then when you get divorced, as you mentioned, is do you want to sell things peacefully or do you want to kind of salt the earth? And depending on that, you have to kind of be a peaceful mediator, if that makes sense, to facilitate everything. Because you're not just managing the egos of sellers; you have to manage a lot of egos and fellow agents, right? What's that like? For the volume of deals that you deal with all over the country, what's it like to, you know, have offers go slow, have people kind of go quiet, like, you're an advocate for your client, who in this case, for the most part, is a seller, but then the buyers are slow. They're slow to get their approvals. They're slow to do all that. How many times do you feel that you have to pick up more slack than the other side is providing? Like they're not pulling their fair share of the work to get the deal done.
Well, we'll address the agent customer thing, and then I'll talk about the transaction. So for the agent, well, let's say professional to the customer, because you have agents, you have attorneys, you have therapists, moving companies, credit companies. So we use a lot of artificial intelligence um, to communicate what the consumer wants. They're in process. Before they're in process, we're feeding them a ton of information, right? Information that's clear and concise, right? And helps them understand what the process looks like. Once they get into the process, we're constantly monitoring how the client feels, asking them at what stage they're at. Now, when when you have a transaction and you go to market, right? There's always some level of difficulty because you could have you're gonna have multiple parties, spouses. They may or may not agree on the price. More likely, they won't agree. The house is gonna go to market. Somebody's gonna feel some kind of way. Like you said, you could have got more money. At the end of the day, it's about having them both understand what the process looks like so they can accomplish the same goal. Because at the end of the day, most people care about money, but they actually care about life and memories, right? They need the money to accomplish it, but once the money's gone, it's gone, right? And you can always get more. So when you're working in this industry and you have a home like this, clearly no home is listed with a for sale sign in the front yard that says divorcerealestate.com, right? Like nobody's doing that, right? It's listed with a brokerage, it's listed with an agent. And the thing that we teach the agents is like, look, this is a complicated task. We're working with multiple people, two two family members. We're working with two attorneys, two two people's families. There's a lot going on in here, and um, this is going to be a process that is going to be intentional for us, and we're going to take our time, right? And you need to understand that everything's just not going to happen on your dime. And if we teach that if you get a transaction, if you're in a multiple offer situation, it's not always about the money. It's about the agent. Like, does that agent have control of their clients? Because at the end of the day, you are managing a ticking time bomb on your side. You don't need the two ticking time bombs. So if that agent doesn't have control of their clients, and they don't, you call their lender, and their lender is like, well, they turned in some docs, they haven't done this, right? So you have to do your due diligence for the fact of the other agent, right? Has the other agent sold a lot of homes? What does his reviews look like? How long has he been working with his buyers? Did he do a proper buyer's consultation? All these things, right? And you can't control that, right? And you can't steer the client to take one offer or not. You can prevent. You can. You could present facts, right? You could present facts to your client. So when we're doing this, we're looking at, is this agent on the co-oping side going to offer the best roadmap for our clients so we can accomplish the goal, right? Do they understand that occupancy is needed after closing, whatever it may look like? But we teach our agents that you're like a full-time therapist for your clients. One of the other clients is not going to like you. One will, and then you got to deal with this agent. If an agent does not have good work ethics, they can't be part of our program. Because it's not like something you can just delegate. Here, this is not a delegation task, right? And we have systems of price where the agent's got to do certain things, right? And that ultimately will get validation from the clients to make sure the agent's doing those certain things. Because a divorce can take anywhere from a week to years. And depending on what the courts have, we want to make sure there's a professional person front-facing the courts, front-facing attorneys, because at the end of the day, the courts may get involved and call you in and ask you what your position is. And we're more of a mediation company than anything, right? Our goal is to achieve the most money, so whatever the court decides or the partners agree on, we can accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, just like in all real estate transactions, the sooner and fewer days on market, the better. Um,
Hmm.
and and getting at the highest offer possible is not always great if it's with an agent who, like you said, doesn't follow up or doesn't have control of their client, um, or even worse, blames you, like turns it around and makes it a psychological game. Like you said, you just want people to help regain their inner peace, and
Correct.
and you know. So you mentioned earlier military service. So obviously, want to thank you for your service. I I'm part of a cause called Hire Vets, and one of the missions there is to help people transition to civilian life. Talk for a moment to perhaps other veterans who are maybe leaving the military or struggling to kind of adapt and transition to life. Talk about some of the good skills that you carried, I guess, like at the very least discipline and work ethic, and talk about how people can kind of you know make that shift from one way of life to another.
Yeah, that's a tough subject, right? Because everybody deals with trauma in different ways. Um, I personally believe that um, men, right? We've been, especially real men, that are providers, pro, protect our country. I believe that um, mentally that their their mindset is that they're just supposed to be strong and not be weak. And um, plenty plenty of people turn to things, right, like drugs, drinking. For me, well, I know that drinking is not good for me, right? So I don't do it. I know that I probably have fun for a couple hours, but then the provocations that will result from it won't be good. And I learned that lesson younger, that I was tired of rebuilding bridges, just for one night of fun. So when I talk to veterans, right, I think the most important piece is um, understanding what's most important to them, right? Is that their kids? Is it their family? Um, and going deep on that. When you go deep on why, you know, for some people they don't have any family. America was their family, and when they leave the military, they don't have anything else left. I think therapy is the only real option. Uh, like so leaning hard into therapy or finding groups, and for some people uh, that are really good in the military and discipline, they're very successful entrepreneurs. Now, the one thing that I do know is that you can't fix yourself on your own. You can take steps, but if you're the one manifesting why you're broken, you don't have a voice, a reason. Um, so I believe therapy is key, and I also believe that having a circle of people who you want to be like, where you want to elevate and mentor up to, is important. And there's no shame if you go to Alcohol Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, or you go to a therapist. Um, Everybody has to go and get their tires changed on their car at some time. Everybody's got to get an oil change. So I think for veterans that are struggling, um, it's like they don't want to be weak, and they don't want to share. Like they have this idea like they have to continue to be a man, and I don't fault them for that, right? But at the end of the day, for the people who are struggling back to get into society, I would find a mentor, um, and I want to compartmentalize it. For the longest, I compartmentalized my military career. I compartmentalized my youth, growing up. Um, and once you handle those traumas and you forgive those and you forgive yourself and you go through the whole experience, um, it's actually a huge weight off your shoulders. And what's weird is that the discipline that you incur in the military is like no other, and it really, really can cause you to be super successful, right? Um, and then understanding that you're not going to make everybody happy, right? There's a lot of people in this industry who may not like me because I'm just brutally honest, blunt, truthful, and I don't work in the gray area. Right? Everything is either yes or no, and I give them the facts, and they can make a decision. Um, so I think another thing too is like, you know, veterans should be using their GI Bill to buy homes, right? And then you have a job, right? So now you got a job, you're paying your bills, and just finding the right group of people, I think, is key for veterans and using therapy. Um, but I won't. It's hard to speak on how somebody should do something because everybody's different. But at the end of the day, finding somebody to talk to is key, and staying away from drugs and alcohol is key too.
So
You know?
maintaining positive habits and fewer escapes and don't do anything alone because that's just going to help people spiral. And so
Yeah.
that's a great lesson.
The, there's a saying that the idle mind is the devil's playground. I would agree, right?
Hmm.
It just takes one moment to say, "Oh, it won't hurt to do it this one time," or this or that. But um, if you're around forward-thinking people, you should just want to be around them anyways. I don't care if you're a veteran or not. But finding mentors, making posts on social media. I post a lot, right? It may not fit the general public's narrative, but the one or two people that it helps, that's where I fit in. You know?
And what kind of like people are always looking for mentors. Like, what type of personal development books or people do you look up to, or have you looked up to over your career that you'd recommend to anyone to say, you know what, tune into what they have to say or read a little bit of what they have to write.
In real estate, um, well, I would say this. Obviously Tony Robbins, um, E.T. Eric Thomas. Um, I think it's all what you can relate to, right? So for me, I grew up in the ghetto in Detroit. So I grew up in the '90s. So I need to be relatable to like old school hip hop. Somebody who's not boring. Um, I need to be relatable to other veterans, right? Um, People who do business development. So for me, I listen to E.T. Eric Thomas a lot. I listen to John Cheplack. He's a real estate coach. He used to be an alcoholic. He got his life together. He tells you how it is. He's a fitness guru. Um, Joe Rogan, right? The number one podcast in the world, right? Unless it's that. And then, I have an Audible account, right? And by trade, I'm going to go in there and listen to things about like family abuse, drinking, addiction, business development, things that I can relate to. Why am I broken? How did I get here? Right? Some of the most successful CEOs have had the most devastating lives, right? Because we have life's history behind us. I mean, 1-800 Breakup is here because what my mom went through when I was 10 years old. It wasn't like I was just like, I'm going to build this company. It has a direct connection. So, um, you know, somebody who you can relate to is important to me. Somebody who's real and honest, and somebody who's controversial. Because if they're pissing off somebody, the number one thing that I've learned in life is if you're pissing off somebody, they're probably telling the truth, and other people don't like the truth. So that's why I'm okay with pissing people off. But if somebody's relatable and other people are like, ew, you listen to them or you watch them, it's cool. My political party, my political views don't agree with some of the people who wrote books, but some of those books are the best books that I've ever listened to in my life, right? And so I would just implore to like, you listen to a book. If you're not vibing in the first 5 minutes, no big deal. Find somebody else, right? And how does that like relate to you, right? Some of the best books are like, um, uh, you know, um, The Art of Not Giving Up, right?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Rich Dad, or what is the dad's book?
There's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean,
Yeah, Rich Dad, yeah, all that,
there's a
yeah,
whole bunch of
that
them.
book,
Oh yeah.
right? But at the end of the day, the titles, like you think about the titles and then the content, and they're totally different, right? You're like, wow, you know, for me, um, I have, if I pull up my phone and I look at my Audible, um, for me, dating is like that's one thing that I never figured out, right? So for example, I got a book, Single on Purpose, right? And then I got a book from Oprah Winfrey, What Happened to Me, right? Um, the several levels of communicating, like the, Think and Grow Rich, like exactly what to say. And then I listen to books like, um, Barry Jenkins wrote Too Nice for Sales. He works at Ylopo. So I think it's all about the most successful people are growing and learning. And the problem is that we don't have everybody around us because we're too busy working. So books are the next best option. I feel like I've learned more in the last 20 years than I learned in all of high school. Everything I learned in high school is pointless, except for how to add and write. Like everything was pointless. Everything that I do now, I've learned from books and
I don't know if it was Mark
and
Twain that
mentors
said,
around me.
"Don't let."
So finding mentors, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whoever's in your group, right? I've had mentors like Jeff Glover, Mark Z, really great real estate agents, right? Um, but you have to understand that the people who you want to be your mentor, the good ones don't have an ego, and they're probably not going to have all the time that you want available for yourself. So you need to be smart when you're around them. Watch their body language, listen to them, take notes, look at their social media, because they only have so much time to give to you because they're out doing something. So that used to be a problem with me. I used to get frustrated with my coaches and mentors because I'd be like, well, why aren't you just telling me to give me the business plan? Or why aren't you telling me how to be successful? Well, no, you got to go out and put it together what works for you. And I think that's important when you find mentors and you're listening to books because now you're going to start to say, oh, yeah, that guy, yeah, I got a little bit from him, but I'm on to the next. And I'm a firm believer outside your kids and your wife, if you have one, friends are seasonal. They're there for seasons. They're not meant to be in your life forever. When you understand that, because somebody is going to grow and move, and when you understand that, that's when you win. And it's sad to say that relationships, sometimes marriages are like that. They're not meant to stay together. They're whatever happened happened, and it's time to move on. If that makes sense.
I mean, just like that classic line of "the grass is greener on the other side," and some will say, "Well, the grass is greener where you water it." So whichever romantic relationship, friendships, any of that, like you have to water it. So if you
Mm-hmm.
and make time for just to be present and have moments together, then you can maintain that relationship. But if you're on the growth and they're on the comfort level, you're not going to have as much in common to talk about. And in
Right.
fact, they might hate you. And like I said, I don't know what kind of rap music you listen to, but I grew up in the '90s too. So we had East Side, we had Biggie, and we had all these personas, right? Because we want to be relatable to people, right? We want to
Mm-hmm.
We want to expand our perspective beyond just our circle. And what I really admire, I think, what you built, you built what I think the solution that you would have loved for your mom to have when you were a kid. That wasn't really available.
Right, right, 100%. It wasn't available then, but if it was, things may have been different. You know, yeah. So yeah, I just built a solution that it's crazy because I'm the only company in the whole world with this solution. It's so crazy to think someone even put this together.
Well, because most people are generalist, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we don't typically go to general physicians. You go to a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
If something's wrong with your foot, you go to a podiatrist. Something's wrong with your heart, you go to a cardiologist. Something's wrong with your brain, it could be a psychologist, a neurologist. It could be all kinds of doctors, but you go to this expert, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've done at this point over thousands of transactions, with your team all over the country. Who better to understand the the, the realities of what a breakup is than someone who can connect you to therapists, attorneys, and agents throughout the country that uh, either have gone through what you've gone through or have helped others who've gone through this. So they,
Right,
they get you more than most. And some people they'll pretend like they understand you, but they're just nodding their way to a sale. And
right, 100%.
you've built a community where even after the transaction's over, you're going to check in on people.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like? What's that like to help to even just to say hi a few months after sale when there's no business
It's
opportunity?
really rewarding, like this, you know, just like anything in life, just like a veteran who goes to war and comes home, and they have things to deal with, people going through a divorce and, the small steps, the small wins, when people call and, or they thank me or they thank one of the agents, the program, and they're like, hey, you changed my life forever, or I was going to commit, I was going to end my life, or, those are the wins, right? Um, like I said, there's probably not, with very few exceptions, there's probably nothing that's happened in life to somebody else that hasn't happened to me. And for me, I could have the poor me syndrome or why me, but I'm still here and I'm able to help people. So um, I believe that when those people call and tell you that you changed their life, that they'll pay it forward. So for me, it's refreshing. I've had lots of people who told me my company wouldn't work. Whenever I tell people who I own, people are like, "Oh yeah, I got a relationship with an attorney. They want to find some tangent. Yeah, I have an attorney who sends me clients." Like, right, but they're transactional, right? I'm more like I'm more focused on the damage that is happening to the youth inside the divorce, right? I was 10 years old when I went through mine, or my parents went through mine. So, um, it's kind of refreshing to see the wins, and you can stop something bad from happening if that makes sense. And that's where my faith comes in, and I believe that I'm doing what I was sent here to do. If that makes sense.
So your faith drives you to this higher calling.
Yeah, but it did. And there's been times where I've questioned my faith, and I was off doing my own thing, drinking and being reckless, and I was successful, but I was still just being me. So I would say that getting clarity and getting right with your faith is super important, and ultimately that's where I feel like that I think everything worked out for the best.
Oh, and it sounds like the redemption path that we all kind of walk through in our faith journey. And I was reading the story of the prodigal son this morning, and it's always inspiring that regardless of how many mistakes we all make, our Father still loves us, right?
Right.
Father in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
That you make all the mistakes in the world, and even in divorce, we don't need to know the particulars of whatever happened. It happened, right? There's no sense in pointing. It's in the past. What do we do?
Right.
How do we
Yeah.
heal? How do we move on from this? It happened. Like the emotions need to dial down. We need to, like you said, get therapy or exercise and be positive, because a lot of people post divorce don't know how to deal with their feelings, right? A bunch of feelings are boiling over that have been repressed for years, and
Mm-hmm.
people take the drugs, some people take the drinking, other people end their lives. So
Right.
we want happy solutions, or at least more or less something you can live with.
Correct.
And sometimes, having being a guy who's gone through the family court system, it's a meat grinder. And if you do it in a city, it's even tougher. So you know
Yeah. It can be exhausting.
it is. So just like all things, just like you vet your properties, vet your partners. Talk to
Yep.
each other. You get to really know each other before you get married or move in together. Don't just fall in love and figure it out, then fall in love. So and I think at some point, like, you would at some point prefer that maybe business go down and people heal their relationships, but if they don't, um, you're here to serve them either way.
Yep. Correct.
So any closing thoughts of like where you see the market going, and I guess the demand for the niche that you serve in the years forward?
Here's the thing, right? I've been in the industry 19 years. I've seen the worst market, the housing crash. And if I was able to do 75 homes in 1 year in the worst market, I, me personally, I don't care where the market goes, right? Good, bad, indifferent. Um, we know after '08 that the government is not going to let the housing market crash. We know that. That's a given, right? We know that interest rates are a game. We've seen them in the '80s as high as 15%, 18%. We've seen them as low as 1.9%. People still need to buy and sell, right? I hear so many agents talking about, I used to be an agent. I couldn't figure it out. The housing market crashed. Woe is me. And you have somebody who was like me who went into the housing market in the crash, sold 75 homes, right? So I don't believe there's a bad market. I believe you find your customers, you find a niche that works for you, you're consistent, you go to work daily. This isn't HGTV. This is a full-time career, and you do your job daily. I get up at 4 in the morning. I go to the gym. I do coaching before I start my day. I prospect. I go on appointments. I do all that. So if someone is getting in the if they're thinking about getting in the real estate, my question to you is, where is your business coming from? Only question. Because your broker's not going to give it to you. How are you going to get business? Average commission is 3%. Let's say you sell $300,000 homes. That's $9,000. How are you going to make all the money to pay your bills and pay the IRS? That's all I want to know. What is your business plan? If you're getting into real estate and you don't have a business plan, all I want to know is what happened at your past job and why weren't you successful there? Because if that's any telltale sign, it's going to be the same in real estate. So where's your business coming from? And two, are you a pessimist? Or are you able to pivot and be proactive driven for success? And what is your exit plan? I've always said the day you come into this business, you should have an exit plan. My exit plan is 1-800-BREAKUP. Right? When that day comes and I sell, what is your exit plan? Are you buying investments? Are you flipping homes? Are you investing in the stock market? What are you doing? Did you build a business or did you build a job for yourself? A lot of real estate agents just built a job for themselves.
Well,
right? And you name every excuse. So I would ask people, why you got in this business? Where's your deals coming from in 4 months? Do you know where your business is coming in from in 4 months? I know where mine's coming from. I know my clients. Are you putting money away? Are you serving people? And what does your exit plan look like? That would be my hints, or my things to people.
yeah, I mean, you know, I think it was Tom Ferry who said something about like live by design, not by default.
Right.
You know, because everyone is like flailing in the wind, hunting that next deal with commission breath, and
Yeah.
sweating everyone in the office, sweating the people. Hey, let's hurry up, let's hurry. Well, if you hit those phones every day and called at least a handful of people, there might be a deal in there. There might be opportunity
Right.
to serve somebody, meet somebody, you know, commiserating and complaining for no solution and just, you know, is low energy. So that's why you got to
Right.
qualify people, say, you know, you got to speak some positivity, even if it's not there yet, because, you know, tides turn. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather deal with a happy agent than a grumpy agent, even if their
Right.
agent is better.
Right.
We know plenty of great agents that nobody wants to talk to or bring their deals to.
Absolutely.
Well, I really want to thank you, Daryl, for being on the show and
Appreciate it.
for your inspiration and all the work that you do. And, you know, 1-800-BREAKUP. Now, so I have 3054 relief, right? And I've noticed
Mm-hmm.
that people under the age of 40, you have to spell out the phone number. So would you mind spelling out 1-800-BREAKUP for those of us that don't know how to?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Um, it is 1-800-273-2587.
And then what's the best way to find you on online and other social channels?
Well, there's only one Daryl Wazynski. You can find Daryl Wazynski TikTok, Daryl Wazynski Instagram, Daryl Wazynski Facebook, Twitter, X, Pinterest, Daryl Wazynski. Just plain as simple as my name. It pulls up. There's a ton of content out there from me.
Well, I'll spell out your name because I always have to spell out mine. It's Wiznsky. Well,
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate you being here and you're just leading from the front, and it's a wonderful example. So thank you for staying true to what you do.
Thanks, Demetri, and I look forward to talking to you soon in the future, and I hope everybody has a great day. God bless and make it a great one.
God bless everyone. Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
we're done recording.